Welcome back to the Illuminated Path podcast, and welcome to another solo episode with me. I'm your host, Liv, and I wanted to pop on today to talk a little bit about the journey of creating Wellfest, which is our signature holistic wellness festival here on Guam. And we just had year 5 just last weekend. And so while it's still fresh in my mind, I wanted to share a little bit about the experience, but also a little bit about the journey over the last 5 years creating this event. Year 5 definitely feels like a milestone for anything, I think, doing something 5 years in a row. And there's been so many lessons, so many learnings, so much evolution around this specific event for me personally, and even just for the Wellness Collective, mission and brand. And so I was trying to think about the 5 things that I've learned within the 5 years of hosting this event. And honestly, I had like 10 things on this list, but I decided, how do I distill it down into, 5 main takeaways and lessons that I've learned from putting this on for 5 years? And I wanted to bring you back before I get into some of the lessons, just into why I even started this event and what it was like in that first year, because it was a very sort of special slash pivotal time in the world at that time. So I had Wellfest on my sort of vision board. It was even when I look back at like the very, very early like creation of Wellness and like some of my mood boards and some of the vision of like the phases that I wanted to roll things out. Wellfest was on there since day one. But I had always thought that it would be more of like a 5 to 7 year plan, right? I was going to start with events and then go into retreats and start to roll out coaching. And then maybe eventually down the road, put something on like this. But because I started, wellness during COVID, I sort of swapped the order of operations of things that I rolled out, where I very much started with coaching because that was the only thing that we could do at that time virtually. And then I started to add on events in 2021 and 2022. So, Wellfest, I think it was after just 2 years in business, I was like, it's time. It's time to do this. Like, this is not the 5 to 7 year plan. This is actually like happening now. And so I remember so vividly going around to sponsors for that first year. And my pitch deck was a combination of like different Pinterest images and the mood board, and just showing something to sponsors that doesn't exist yet is a totally different experience than going back for year 2, 3, 4, 5, where they know what the experience is, they know what the event is, they know what the value is. When you're pitching something that doesn't exist yet, it is just a different conversation, right? And it is asking people to believe in the mission, believe in the vision, trust you that you're going to bring this to life, that it's not just going to be what it looks like from Pinterest, right? That it's actually going to be executed. And for something like this, where you're pitching, to start an event, I wasn't really positioning it as this one-time event that just happens one time, but really is like the part of this bigger vision and bigger like movement of like wanting to grow it, wanting to expand it, wanting to evolve it. So I even remember with that first venue that I used the first year, I don't think they took me seriously literally until move-in day the day before, when they started to see all the vendors start setting up, all the sponsors bringing in their banners and logos. Like, and I remember like looking down because the venue had like a stairs, and you can kind of look down and to see like the center part where everyone was setting up. And I remember thinking, they really didn't know what I was going to be doing and like setting up. And we were bringing in like AstroTurf. We were bringing up like this big plant wall. We had all these like, it was a big space. So we had a lot of vendors for that first year. And I remember looking at the team from the venue and them really being like, oh, okay, she's serious. This is not just like some, yoga teacher that's coming in wanting to like host a little event. Like, there were going to be that first year, like close to 200 people that were there. And so that I just going back to that first year and just the create something before it exists energy, I feel like has really been something I've carried with me through all 5 years. And for a little context around that first year, it was very much in the middle of us coming out of the pandemic, where there were a lot of social gathering rules, and we were in the moment of like there being different rules around, like, can 100 people gather, can 150 people gather, can, is it indoors, outdoors? There were a lot of like rules and regulations and, different things that we had to plan for. So we were literally looking at, okay, option A, we can have 150 people here, 200 people here. Option B, maybe we have to have half indoor, half outdoor. Like option C, maybe we have two different rounds of this event. Like we were thinking through all the different ways to have this event happen. And if I recall, it was one of the first bigger events that happened post COVID. So, people being locked, in lockdown and just limiting social interaction for so long. And to come back with an event that was focused on holistic wellness, that was like bringing vendors out, back out of the woodwork in front of this community. I feel like the energy in that first year was not only, oh, this is exciting because it's new, but it's exciting and it's needed. It's deeply needed at this time. So I always reflect every time we have Well Fest and think back to like those early days, because there are so many lessons in that, even in that first, like creating something before it exists. Year two got bigger. We changed venues to a new place to accommodate, and just to find a venue partner that wanted to expand with us. And so we ended up hosting year 2 and 3 at the same place. And we took over that whole hotel, like every possible space that you could rent. We were inside, outside, down by the beach, every little conference room. And I would say that those were really the 2 years of like growth and expansion, where there was a lot of buzz and momentum around the event, but it was definitely a time where, if I look back at year 2 and 3, the most was happening. It was like the most breakout sessions, the most vendors, the most people. Like at one year, I think year 3, we had like up to 400 people. We had like 6 breakout sessions. We had 3 speakers. We had like, so it was definitely like a more experience. And it was amazing. It was fun. It was a lot of energy, like so many people coming through. There was a big part of the movement that was like, you could just tell the wellness movement was like full on created at that point. There were a lot of businesses, new businesses popping up in all different sort of sectors and categories. And I do feel like we needed year 3 in order to evolve into what year 4 and now year 5 has been. Because while it was amazing, right, there were so many people. And I look back at those pictures sometimes from years 2 and 3. I was like, wow, that was a lot. I also I was like freshly postpartum for one of the years. Like there was just so much happening. And I really did really value like the partners and the sponsors and all of that came together for those 2 years, because I feel like from there, we were able to have a very clear sort of message and direction, that rather than going bigger, 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 more people, more days, whatever it might be, the message that I was getting as the organizer and just where I wanted to take it was to go deeper, was to scale it down, but to scale it down in the best ways possible, to make it more intentional, to make it more purposeful. And so rather than having, 5 different things going on at the same time and, a 400 people scattered across this big hotel venue, right? That felt really high energy, but didn't really feel like it went that second layer deeper, which was really what I was wanting to do with my community. That was the spark that really shifted year 4. So year 4, which was last year, I decided, the theme was metamorphosis. It was, completely kind of going into this journey of the butterfly. And I think one of the 2 big changes that I made for year 4 actually a lot of changes happen in year 4, but one of the big changes that happened was that first I decided to make it 2 days. Decided to make it more of a retreat style experience. So rather than like 10 things happening at the same time, I decided to have everyone go through the same thing. So it was like everyone was going through this breakout session. Everyone was exploring the vendors at the same time. Everyone was going through basically the same program. So it's much more of a retreat style experience rather than like choose your own adventure. Um, I was it was 2 days. It was capped at 150 people, like, by design, very intentionally, and it took people away from Tumon, which is, like, the main tourism area of Guam, and it was really with the intention of bringing people away and getting people away from sort of, like, the busyness, if you will, of the past venues that we had been in. We chose a venue that not many people had been to in a while, like that maybe they had been to like years ago, but really hadn't been there recently. And so we wanted to kind of reimagine what that space looked like and basically turn it into a space that they hadn't recognized, which as people were walking into the venue, they were like, wow, I haven't been here in a while. And like, I've never seen it look like this. And I think that is like a common theme of all the years is that we've always turned every venue into something that it hasn't looked like before. And for that, I'm really always proud of like how we're able to transform the spaces. But at the end of last year, after doing it for 4 years, I really wasn't sure if I was going to put it on in year 5. I had sort of parked it as like, this isn't, year 4, that was it. We'll transition into other events and other experiences and really grow it in different ways or grow the brand in different ways. But one of the things I shared in my keynote for year 5 or my welcome for year 5 was about really listening to, my intuition, listening to the call, listening to the idea that kept coming through to bring this theme of solstice through. And so, while I normally plan this event starting in October for an event that happens in June, for year 5, I didn't actually make the call to like do it until probably January or February. And I was like, okay, let's do it, year 5. And I'll get into this as I get into some of the lessons. Like I really had to figure out how do I make this experience easier, more enjoyable, and still offer something super impactful for the community. So that's just a little bit about the journey to get to year 5 and just how it's evolved over the years. I will say that year 5 definitely felt the most fulfilling. We also shifted a few things for year 5. So we capped it at 130 attendees by design. We've sold out every single year, but having it smaller and more intimate and more intentional felt really, really important for me for year 5. We also changed venues to a different venue and we made it a morning event rather than like an evening or even a 2-day event. And it continued that same theme of bringing people through the same experience. I feel like that really worked in year 4. And so I wanted to bring that into year 5. But the topics that we talked about, just the level of simplicity was actually really, really intentional. It's like getting the people who really want to be in the room and going through topics that can be, quite deep and quite heavy. We talked about a lot around trauma and, the nervous system and somatic work and healing in year 5, where I don't think we could have done that in year 1. I mean, we definitely talked about a variety of topics each year, but I feel like this year, from a speaker, from a content perspective, definitely went the deepest, but the community I feel like was the most ready for that kind of work. So getting into the list of some of the things that I've learned over 5 years of hosting this event. And I'll keep, I'll try to keep this as anonymous as possible as I share some of the, behind the scenes. But I will say that one of the first things that came to mind is how important and how necessary it's been to basically be able to take risks as I've created this. I talked earlier about how I had to pitch something that hadn't been created yet. There is a risk in doing that. But also every year I have always found myself in this moment, and it has been in full transparency, quite stressful, where I'm planning the event and putting on, I'm talking to the speakers, I'm arranging them to come out, I'm booking the venue, I'm booking, certain pieces of the event that do require like early booking, right? It takes months in advance to secure speakers and secure partners and all of that. And there's always been this a bit of this free fall moment where I have to move forward with planning the event while also I'm still confirming what funding I have to bring this event to life. And, in full transparency, there's been years where sponsors haven't actually fully confirmed until very close to the event, or I haven't received payment until way after the event. And so there's this moment of like, I have to keep planning and I have to keep moving forward because I believe this event is going to happen, but not fully having all of the funds yet or all of the like commitment yet for this to come to life. So has always been that free fall moment of like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And I feel like that is, honestly, really, really a draining part of the event. But it is something that I think is necessary sometimes when you're trying to put something on, when you believe that what you're putting on is going to be the right thing for that, that year, that experience. And when you're also doing it in a place that maybe is a little bit more last minute or communication isn't the strongest, it's like having to really take that risk has always paid off in the end, but it has always been like a key part of this event planning experience is like continuing to move even when others are not moving. So that's the one thing that comes to mind is like a lesson that I've learned is just, I guess I've expanded my risk tolerance in a lot of ways. And I think that is like a key thing that entrepreneurs experience. I think any entrepreneur or business owner listening can relate to the fact that like your ability to like sit in that uncertainty, discomfort, taking the risk is like a huge part of the entrepreneurial journey. And the other, thing that as I was thinking about the second lesson that I've learned over the past couple years is related to my team. So my team has evolved a lot over the past 5 years. I would say that the team looked pretty similar, maybe for the first 2 to 3 years. Having someone that was on my kind of right hand that was helping me for a lot of the planning and behind the scenes. But then getting into like year 4, I had a new team that was working with me on the event. Year 5 was also completely different as well. So one of the things I've always really believed in when it comes to Wellfest in particular is that if we're not having fun, what's the point, right? We have to make this an experience not only fun to execute and put on, but like making the planning process fun as well. And so I do feel like a lot of my like creative spark has come to life when I've planned, Wellfest, as I'm thinking about, the attire, like the mood boards, the decor, how are we going to decorate the bathrooms? Like what kind of swag bags are we going to do? Like it is really fun, right? It's putting on a wellness festival and adding in that bit of inspiration from festivals that I've attended around the world, music festivals, lifestyle festivals. It is a really fun, creative, experience getting to even think about like how to promote it, what kind of social media content to create, how to just keep elevating the creativity. So I think from a team perspective, I've really learned that like we have to also have fun in the process of creating the event, as much fun as we want to have the attendees to have when they're actually at the event. So that's sort of a question that I've come back to year over year. Like, am I having fun? And maybe that's why as we've gotten into year 4 or 5, I have had to question like, okay, how do I make this more enjoyable? Um, you know, one of the meetings I typically like to have with my team closer to the event is a meeting where we specifically basically pick apart the event and what could go wrong. Not from like a negative perspective, but really to think about like what are all the things that are potentially out of our control and how can we already just get ahead of them, right? What if it rains? What if there's a line, for this year, for example, we had a big transition where we had to bring, 130 people downstairs into like the upstairs area. So we were like what if there's lines at the elevators? What happens then? What if it rains outside and we have to move it inside? Like we were just thinking through all the things that could go wrong. What if this person doesn't show up? What if this is late? Like, and I do feel like that has been a really helpful meeting and experience to think through, is like just all the things that are out of our control. Let's think about them, talk about them, get them out off our chest, like anything that we're nervous about, so that we can go into the event at least knowing, like, okay, we've talked about this. We know this might be something that comes up. What's our game plan? And I do feel like that has been super helpful. I do feel like having people on a team, especially for events, who are willing to, think on their feet, be adaptable, be creative. I've had team members that like when we realize, okay, we're out of a certain food item, or the bathroom, trash can is full or whatever, all these little details, right? And when we notice that, okay, the venue's not on it, okay, they still haven't refilled this. I've had team members literally like in the kitchen bringing things out, behind the scenes, like looking in the closet for something that we need. And I feel like that is the kind of, especially for events, like team member that is so valuable, is just someone that's like, okay, we're going to figure this out. No staff is around. And I feel like every year we've actually experienced that to some degree, is like not having the event appropriately staffed, not from our end, but just from either the venue or whatever it might be, where we always have to jump in and like we're moving. This year we were moving a bunch of furniture. Last year we were like in the kitchen, bringing drinks out. Like the team has always popped in to step in when we needed to, and I am so grateful for that, because I'll see like, oh, what is like my team doing, in the back kitchen? But I'm like, that's actually seems just about right. So having that kind of team dynamic, team approach, team like quality, I think is a really important thing for Wellfest. All right, number 3. This one is a tricky one. I'm going to try to be as transparent but also real about, this piece of the puzzle, which is one of the things I've learned as the host of the event, or the organizer of the event, right? And so much happens before we actually even open ticket sales. So much happens before we open doors to the event. There's a whole journey that happens behind the scenes. People see the moment they check in, they get their cute little wristband, they get their welcome drink, but the journey behind that to put this thing on, and in the scheme of things, it's a small event, a few hundred people compared to events that have thousands and thousands of people, right? So but from my experience, I think one of the biggest things that have been both a lesson, but also, yeah, a lesson in a lot of different ways, has been around communication. Communication is so key. I mentioned this at the start with like taking risks, right? Like I start planning this event in October. I'm reaching out to sponsors, I'm reaching out to vendors, I'm like figuring out like what is the plan. I'm reaching out to speakers, like all of this pre-communication happens. And that's why I typically have started to do it in October, because it literally has taken between October and maybe March to get answers on things, right? To have there be movement in things. And it's really interesting to get this view of like, as an entrepreneur, I'm typically working with not that many people. Like I mostly work with myself and my team, and maybe I have a couple like, partners in for different events. But for Wellfest in particular, it's the time of the year where I go from kind of working in isolation to all of a sudden I'm talking to like 50 different people, more than that, right? At one time. And so it's interesting to see the communication trends and themes, and just noticing, right? Talking to people who are in all different industries, who are in all different types of roles, and just how important communication is. It seems so basic, but I have had to like basically chase people down in certain areas for months. For months. I've had also certain, years where one year a sponsor is sponsoring at the highest level, and the other year they don't respond to any emails, right? Like I've had that happen in a variety of different, circumstances where part of me really does get curious, and I get curious of like, is it just their inboxes are full? Is it they just don't know if they can move forward again this year? Is it just saw it, doesn't really care to respond? I want to hope it's not that, right? But it is really interesting just to see how communication plays a role in events, right? There are certain people that they see your email, they respond, confirming, I received this, give me 2 weeks to get back to you with an answer, right? There are people who do that. There's also people that, are just straight up don't respond ever, right? After multiple emails, calls, WhatsApps, whatever it might be. Um, have found that over the past 5 years, in order for me to really want to keep working together in a business capacity, it is like bare bones essential for them to be able to respond to emails. It's a very simple thing. It's like respond to emails or respond to WhatsApp messages, whatever it is. Like, but being able to respond back in a semi-timely manner, right? I'm not saying like same day, but like same month, maybe. I would say that that has been just a huge lesson for me in it seems so simple, but the people that I choose to work with versus the people I don't want to work with again, a lot of it comes down to like ease of communication. And unfortunately, I've had to learn this over 5 years the hard way, right? Of like just chasing and chasing and chasing. And so I think when it comes to, creating events and really protecting your energy around it and having a lot of the energy go towards the actual development of the event, for me, a big lesson has been like just work with people who respond, work with people who care, and it is it's a double-edged sword because there's a piece of like, there are going to be partners or people that you do have to work with that might not be the same like working style or working pace as you. That's just life. But if we can choose to find people who do kind of match that same pace and energy, it makes things so much easier. So I'm so thankful for, partners that I've had with this event that do that. All right, so lesson 4, which I mentioned a little bit about this as it related to year 4. But this idea of really going deeper with the community versus having to go bigger, expand, grow, grow, grow. And when there's a lot of like buzz and like traction around an event, it's easier to be like, okay, so we sold out 200 tickets in a couple days. Like, let's increase to 300 and then let's go to 400. Or like, oh, we sold 400. Let's, make it 5 days. Let's make it, just make it more complex. Let's add more, more, more. To to make the decision to say no, that I don't actually think that's the best thing for the event and the best thing for the business, to decide like I'm actually only going to reach out to these partners this year instead of all of these partners from last year, to make the decision that I'm going to invite certain vendors into the experience versus like doing an open call to anyone and everybody, to decide to cap the attendance even if there's a big wait list. It all does take a level of like trust and really tapping into the abundance mindset, rather than thinking like, oh, just because there's more demand doesn't mean I have to meet all of the demand. And so that's been a huge piece of it because I have really wanted to protect the quality of the experience. So that word comes up for me a lot. I'd rather have 100 people have a really powerful, strong experience than 400 people that are like in and out and taking photo ops and like maybe I'll show up and then like bye, that was fun, and they left with like a couple photos of the event, right? That to me is not fulfilling at all. But to have people who come up to me after the event and say were there the entire time, who made connections there, who really really value the quality, that is like a big decision to make and a big like pivot to make when it's really easy to say like let's grow and get bigger, bigger, bigger. So that whole evolution of the event, I think in year 5 really showed the ways that you can simplify the event in all the right ways to really have impact at the forefront. And then finally, final lesson, and there, like I said, I had like 10 things on this list, but I was like, let me just narrow it down to 5. The fifth one is really, I think, the essence of why I even started this event in the first place. And that is because nothing compares to in-person experiences. Nothing compares to the power of getting people in the room feeling something. And the someone told me from year 5 just recently, they said that they felt like that room, like the main room that we were in with the keynote and the speaker and the workshop, they were like, that room felt like such a safe space. And when I looked around when the speaker was, sharing her story, I saw so many people crying, tears, emotional. I saw people comforting them. And when I am able to look around the room and just see like this is truly a safe space, people are leaving in the best mood. They're leaving so grateful, so thankful, so like just filled up on like love and connection, seeing all the vendors like meet all these new potential clients. One of that to me is like so, so rewarding. And just the power of in person, power of community, power of supporting the local businesses that are really like the heartbeat of Guam. I made the decision, maybe it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, that I didn't want to charge for vendor spaces, but I instead wanted them to all offer something that was like interactive and something that rather than just being like a table with pamphlets, I was like, that is so boring. Anybody who's been to a vendor fair that just walks around with table and a bunch of pamphlets, so boring. So from the beginning, I've always wanted Wellfest vendor spaces to be like activations. I want people to come in and experience your brand, experience what you do. And I love the creativity that's come from the vendors over the years. We've had some really cool activations. But yeah, I think it was 2 years ago, I said, you know what? These businesses are putting so much into being here, like they're showing up, they're here for the full day. They have their team. They're taking a day out of like their normal days, that I didn't want to charge them for like a vendor space, but I wanted them to really co-create the event with me, like co-create this magic, like bring your booth, bring your activity, right? And like, let's make this experience amazing. And I had that again this year where it's like I invited all the vendors in, people I work with a lot of the times, people that I just are doing interesting, different things in the wellness world. And just to be able to, have the wellness community, the small businesses that are, doing this every day, come into this space and like bring their pop-ups and bring their massage chairs and bring their little activations and activities. It is such a powerful part of that like co-creation. So so I wanted to share, while it's been all like very fresh in my mind, I wanted to share some of the real talk behind, Wellfest and like what it takes to put this on. It is, I will say it is, every year has been challenging in its own ways. I don't think if it was just easy a walk in the park that it would really, even mean as much at the end, but it has given me some really crystal clear ideas of like where I see taking events and experiences for the ENA community. Perhaps there will be a year 6, but maybe it will take another shape in a different way. But I will say I'm just really proud of the 5 years. Like I said, like a milestone of 5 years of anything, but also 5 years with these lessons under my belt has felt like, even though challenging in many ways and even though frustrating in many ways, I do feel like the outcome has always been impactful. It's always hit certain people at the right time. It's always been the message that people have needed to hear. So from that perspective, even though I might not commit to Wellfest forever, I do commit to creating in-person, impactful, quality experiences. And so I hope if you're listening to this, if you've been to any Wellfest, definitely, share which one was your favorite. Maybe share your favorite Wellfest moment in the comments or in our DMs. And thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.